The island of Curacao. It was formed 90 million years ago in the Pacific Ocean near Peru, got pushed into the Caribbean Sea to a point just off the coast of Venezuela, and ended up as part of the Dutch Kingdom of the Netherlands. And I thought my life was confusing. The capital city of Willemstad is like a mini-Amsterdam transported to a tropical climate. The coral reefs that surround the island have made it an important destination for divers. The beaches have made it an important destination for vacationers. Only 150,000 people live on the island, but they came here from over 50 different nations. An extraordinary ethnic mix, with everyone making a contribution to the local traditions. It's a fascinating place. So join me, Burt Wolf, for Travels and Traditions in Curacao. The first Europeans to set foot on Curacao were Spanish explorers who showed up in 1499. When they realized that there was no gold on the island, they set up a few cattle farms as a future source of food and shoved off. Then in 1634, the Dutch arrived and took control of the island. The Spanish surrendered without much resistance, but the cattle put up an extraordinary fight, though they were eventually forced to surrender. The Dutch influence is still very strong in Curacao. Besides the political relationship between Curacao and Holland, there's an ongoing cultural relationship and a shared history of more than 350 years. The historic center of Willemstad is called Punta, which means the point, and its architecture is classic Dutch colonial from the 16 and 1700s. The Dutch colonists, like colonists all around the world, tried to recreate their homeland.
So we're in the middle of Otrobanda. Otrobanda was built since 1708, 18th century. It started off...
Anko van der Woude is one of Curaçao's leading architects and an authority on the island's architectural history.
Okay, this is the Peña building, built in 1708, and that represents the Rococo or Renaissance, the Renaissance style.
All the 1700s was that Renaissance.
All the 1700s, yes, the whole of the 18th century. You can tell by the curls, and if you would go to Amsterdam, the same period, you would find the same kind of architecture. The building used to stop here, and this was the addition of about the 2 yards, which is added.
Yes, so you can see where it ended.
Exactly.
And then suddenly they built it out.
Yeah. Okay. And also, what you see is the color. The first houses were made with bricks. They glued them together with mud, and the outside you had to plaster, thus making it a closed wall. And if you plaster, you paint it. And they were mostly painted white.
Whitewashed.
Whitewashed. That was the cheapest color they could get.
And how did they get to be so colorful?
Well, there was a governor in 1816, and you can imagine most of the houses, when being white, when the sun reflects in the houses, he said, whenever I walk through town, I get a terrible headache because of the sun. I want them to be painted another color within 2 weeks, and all the houses were painted other colors except white.
Did his headaches go away?
That doesn't say. The history doesn't tell.
Okay. Well, they certainly are beautiful.
Yeah.
The districts of Punta and Otrobanda are connected by the Queen Emma pontoon bridge. This is quite a piece of work. The entire bridge is set on a series of floats. The Otrobanda end sits on wheels that are locked onto a circular track. The Punta end has a set of diesel engines attached to propellers. When they want to open the bridge, the engines are started, and the bridge swings out from Punta, allowing the harbor traffic to pass. The Jewish community in Curacao built the Mikveh Israel Emmanuel Synagogue, which opened for Passover services in 1732 and has been in use since then, which makes it the oldest synagogue in continuous operation in the New World. The floor of the synagogue is covered with sand as a reminder of the 40 days and nights that the Jews wandered in the desert after escaping from bondage in Egypt. But the sand is also a reminder of the time of the Spanish Inquisition, when Jews were forced to practice their religion in secret rooms. The sand muffled the sound of their movements and their voices. The synagogue also has a museum with objects drawn from its 350-year history. Willemstad is a walking city. Street front shops with friendly staff and shaded places to relax and get something to eat and drink. It's also the only place I know of that took their ancient forts and prisons and instead of turning them into monuments, turned them into restaurants. The historic area of Willemstad, the inner city and the harbor have been placed on UNESCO's World Heritage List. The old buildings in Willemstad are grand structures, but like so many glorious things, they contain the seeds of their own destruction. Coral and quarry stone were used for the walls and held together with a mortar that contained sand from the beaches and seawater. Eventually, the salt in the coral, beach sand, and seawater began leaching out and eating away at the buildings, which began to crumble. Fortunately, there is an aggressive rehabilitation program, and many of the most important buildings will be saved. But sand and seawater are not always negative elements. As a matter of fact, great beaches and water sports are two of the main reasons people visit Curacao. The island has many public and private beaches. Some have snack bars, showers, and an assortment of seaside services. Others are secluded and offer visitors a private moment away from it all. The constant 13-knot trade winds that powered the Spanish treasure galleons, the Dutch, French, and English pirate ships during the 1500s is still around and available to windsurfers. The water temperature is a constant 75 to 81 degrees all year round, and there's approximately 100 feet of visibility underneath the surface, which allowed me to see this. Curacao has been rated as one of the best Caribbean islands for shore diving and snorkeling, with most dive sites easily accessible because the reefs are near the water's edge. The lack of rain on Curacao may be bad for farmers, but it's great for divers. It sets up the high salt content in the nearby waters, which is just the environment for the development of coral reefs. If you're not quite in the Cousteau class, but interested in having an animal encounter of the nautical kind, you can stop into the Curacao Sea Aquarium. A natural tidal pool near the edge of this aquarium is home to hundreds of tropical fish, including a group of sharks that live behind a wire fence fitted with a plexiglass window. Visitors can take a short diving lesson, go below, and feed the sharks and the other fish through small holes in the plexiglass.
We have air in the tank for 1.5 hours. We're going to be on the water for 40 minutes. Before we go in, I'm going to help you to put the equipment on, inflate it for you. What you have to do, put your mask on your face, regulate your mouth, and you walk slowly forward the stairs off. Because you're facing the water, the air you exhale come out as bubbles. And the bubbles always go up, yeah? And they go alongside your ears. Those bubbles, they make a lot of noise. Yeah? That noise is good. That means you're breathing. Okay?
I remember that.
Just imagine you have your mask on like this. That looks very stupid to me. Yeah? And it's going to fall off. So it doesn't work like that. So always on top
of the ears.
Of your ears, like this, so it's not going anywhere. Okay?
Yep.
Maybe by looking around, you see a big stingray sit on my head. That looks funny to you. And you start smiling. No problem. Your mask going to fill up with water.
Oh. No smiling.
Yeah, you can smile. Oh. But you're going to have water in your mask. Okay? When the water reaches your eye level, you will stop smiling. And we got stingrays in here. Don't you worry, the stingrays, they don't bite, they don't sting. But what they do, they
Why do they call them stingrays then?
Because they can sting.
Oh. They know that they wouldn't sting me on television.
Those are used to people. So.
Be the end of their career in television. They'll never be on television again.
Never again. Question so far?
Never let the regulator out of my mouth.
No.
That's it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
BURT!
would like to point out, without animosity or envy, that my beloved producer, Emily Aronson, stayed dry and comfortable observing the situation from a stationary submarine that sits next to the tidal pool. And to add insult to injury, she was eating M&Ms through the entire experience, including my portion. By the middle of the 1600s, Curacao had become the center of the Dutch trading empire in the New World. Unfortunately, a major part of that trade was conducted in slaves. The Curacao Museum in Willemstad tells the story of this appalling business, a business that went on for over 400 years, from 1441 to 1863. There's a reconstruction of the hold of a slave ship. Visitors can get inside and see what the space felt like. A trader's home with furniture made by the slaves. A portrait of a Dutch trader by Frans Hals. Reproductions of slave ships. After they delivered the slaves to Curacao, they turned into pirate ships, stealing pre-Columbian gold from the Spanish, who just stolen it from the Aztecs. There's a building filled with African art from the areas from which the slaves were taken. A collection of over 200 historic prints and other artifacts relating to the history of slavery in the Caribbean. Africans were brought to Curacao and then resold to plantations throughout the New World. The island became the largest transport center for slaves, with over 500,000 Africans passing through the port. It's hard to believe, but slavery still exists, and it exists all over the world. Sometimes the slaves are illegal aliens forced to work for the people who snuck them into the United States or Canada, or indentured workers in a clothing factory, or child brides sold off by her family. It's all slavery, and it's all about money. And a visit to a museum like this will quickly remind you that the fight against slavery is far from over. The entire museum was funded by Jacob Gelt Dekker, who is devoting his life and his wealth to the education of the children of this island. In addition to the material on the slave trade, Dekker has put together a collection of traditional arts and crafts in order to create a greater knowledge and pride in African ancestry. It's a sign of Curaçao's integrity that they present and honor this part of their past. Today, the descendants of the African slaves represent a majority of the population. They hold important positions in government and business, but beneath their sophisticated and modern lifestyle is a deep appreciation for the traditions that held their community together during the difficult times. One of the interesting aspects of their cultural history is in the area of healing. Now, doctors were very rarely available to African slaves, and so the responsibility for medicine fell to women who understood the healing properties of plants. They were of great importance to the community and practiced an art that was brought from Africa and adapted to the plant life of the island. Herbal medicine is still a significant form in Curacao, and its leading practitioner is Dina Veris. Researchers in the United States tell me that there are 3 subjects that Americans are really interested in terms of medicine. They're always looking for something that will help them lose weight, something that will prevent baldness, or something that will increase their sexual energies. You have anything in those areas?
Yes, we have a lot of that in Curacao. Yes. You know, to lose weight, people use garlic. You take 3 pieces of these garlic pieces and you put it in water overnight. And then you will drink it for 40 days. You will drink the water. You know, every day 1 glass of water. It will help you reduce the weight.
It's not going to do a lot for my sex life, but okay.
No, you won't.
Now we're going to deal with my bald spot.
Yes. One of the best things for hair loss is the calabash. This is the calabash. You take this out, you squeeze it, and then you get a black mash. You cook it, you take off the seeds, otherwise your hair will stay with all the seeds. And then you wash the hair with it, you know? Or you can make a shampoo out of it. You know?
Calabash shampoo?
Yes.
Is this a big enough portion for me? Will that work there?
Yes, it's very good. It will work very good.
Okay. We're up to sexual energy?
Yes, we are. With the chuchuguasa.
Chuchuguasa.
Chuchuguasa,
And
yes.
the bark of the chuchuguasa tree, and you make tea from it.
No, you don't make tea.
You make tea.
You then take the kukui. Kukui they take from the agave. And then you put the chuchuguasa in it.
Okay.
And it becomes red. So that's what the people, they drink it once a week, twice a week.
How much?
And just one shot like this. You can use it from the calabash.
A little calabash shot? Okay. Nature's Viagra.
Yes.
This is a great day for me. I'm going to lose weight, my bald spot's going to fill in, and my sex life is going to improve. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let's go walk in the garden.
Going negative.
Modern scientists are discovering the value of herbal medicine, but it's important to remember that the operative word here is medicine. I suggest you check with your doctor before you use any herbal remedy. Almost everyone on Curacao speaks at least 4 languages. Standard Dutch, English, Spanish, and the local language, which is Papiamento. It's a Creole dialect spoken at all levels of society. If you listen carefully, it's pretty easy to pick up some of the key phrases. Buen dia means good day. Buon noche means good night. Danke means thank you. Musha danke means thanks a lot. And the first phrase I learned to use when I arrived on the island, bon come, which means let's go eat. So what's cooking on Curacao? Almost everything eaten on the island has been caught in the surrounding ocean or imported. The nearest sources are the Venezuelan farms on the coast of South America. Every morning, boats from Venezuela tie up along the docks of Willemstad and offer fruit, vegetables, and fish. This floating market has been a traditional shopping area for well over 100 years. At the same time that the Dutch West Indies Company was doing business in the Caribbean, the Dutch East Indies Company was doing business in the Pacific. The major center of their activities was Indonesia. And the internal business between the West Indies Company and the East Indies Company led to a major Indonesian influence in Curacao and to some great Indonesian cooking. The Rijstafel restaurant in Willemstad takes its name from the fact that at both lunch and dinner, it serves a traditional Indonesian rijstafel, which means rice table. It was the phrase used by Dutch colonists to describe a meal at which a bowl of rice was surrounded by 20 or more dishes.
It's grilled chicken with garlic sauce, fried coconut,
Chicken with sweet and sour sauce, salad with peanut sauce and a little tofu,
fried eggplant,
pork with soy sauce.
tomato with spicy sauce,
I recognize that.
beef tender with coconut, and fried bean sprout,
Bananas with honey sauce.
and meatballs.
Meatballs. All right, I think we're close enough to eat. During the 300 years of contact between the Dutch and the Indonesians, the rijstafel became an extravagant institution, with servants carrying in one dish after another. So much fun. In essence, it's an extension of the basic Indonesian family dinner, which always consisted of rice and 5 or 6 additional dishes. When we were in the western part of the island, checking out the dive sites, we stopped for lunch at a restaurant called Yanshi's in the town of West Point. Locals love this place, but it also has a big following among the tourists. Yanshi is the 3rd generation of his family to own the restaurant, and he personally informs you of the day's menu.
Well, for today, a nice fresh fish, and it's the wahoo. For sure, after having this wahoo fish, after eating this wahoo fish, sir, you will say wahoo.
We had the fish, but we didn't say wahoo, because it was snapper. Tender pieces of goat in a well-seasoned stew, with salad, carrots, and peas. Rice and beans and lots of pica, the local onion and vinegar sauce. This is just the kind of place I love. Down home, easy, relaxed, friendly people, and good food. Curacao also has a gastronomic form known as truckipan. Originally, the phrase was truck dipan, which means the truck of bread. Eventually, it shortened to truckipan. Well, there's an enormous selection of really good food on Curacao, but the one thing you are not going to find is a sushi bar, because in the local language of Papiamento, the word sushi means garbage. In the interest of seeing the authentic and the traditional, we stayed at the Avila Beach Hotel. The original structure dates back to 1776, when it was the residence of the colonial governor. It was also the place where the great liberator of South America, Simón Bolívar, lived during his years of exile. For a while, it was a private school, then a private hospital, and finally, it was totally renovated into a beachfront hotel with 2 private cove beaches. The property has a quiet, elegant, and unpretentious style, and many of the guests are families and businessmen from Holland. There's a pier with a restaurant and live jazz. The Dutch have been lovers of American jazz since the 20s. Over the years, the Avila has become a venue for local musicians, painters, and sculptors for the presentation of their work. The hotel has such a respected position in the community that the government issued 3 Avila Beach Hotel stamps to help celebrate its 50th birthday. I asked Tona Muller, the general manager and daughter of the owner, to introduce me to some of her favorite dishes.
Kishina dates back to the arrival of the Dutch and the Jews in Curacao, and it's an Edam cheese hollowed out, filled with a stuffing. The stuffing is made out of prunes, it's made out of olives, it's made out of either tuna or chicken, and capers and peppers. People love to eat lobster in Curacao. We've snazzied it up, made it a little bit Caribbean with a coconut sauce, and it's very flavorful. Bolo cashew pete. It's a local cake. It's made out of cashew nuts. It's a layer cake covered with a coating of mashed cashew nuts, and it's calories, calories, calories.
But taste, taste,
It's
taste.
taste, taste, taste.
Another aspect of Curaçao's culture that has been strongly influenced by the African community is its music and dance. Curaçao's music is a blend of European, Latin American, Caribbean, and U.S. influences. But for me, the most interesting part of its heritage is African, particularly in a form called tambu. It was born in the slave communities as a release from the debilitating oppression. The basic instrument is the drum, known as the tambu. The other instrument is the chapi, type of field hoe. Each is played against the other in a complicated rhythmic pattern. The singing is a series of set calls and responses. Both the music and the dance are clearly part of an ancient African tradition. The social comment inherent in the lyrics and the erotic tension of the dance were more than the government and the Catholic Church could stand. And for years, they mounted an aggressive campaign to suppress tambu. Even today, a government ordinance limits public tambu parties to a few weeks at the end and the beginning of each year. Which also brings us to the end of this show. I hope you have enjoyed this visit to Curacao, and I hope you will join me next time on Travels and Traditions. I'm Burt Wolf.
You can watch this program and link to hundreds of other Burt Wolf programs free at burtwolf.com. There's information on how to tour the same places, plus Burt's slightly irreverent take on history and culture. It's all at burtwolf.com.
The island of Curacao. It was formed 90 million years ago in the Pacific Ocean near Peru, got pushed into the Caribbean Sea to a point just off the coast of Venezuela, and ended up as part of the Dutch Kingdom of the Netherlands. And I thought my life was confusing. The capital city of Willemstad is like a mini-Amsterdam transported to a tropical climate. The coral reefs that surround the island have made it an important destination for divers. The beaches have made it an important destination for vacationers. Only 150,000 people live on the island, but they came here from over 50 different nations. An extraordinary ethnic mix, with everyone making a contribution to the local traditions. It's a fascinating place. So join me, Burt Wolf, for Travels and Traditions in Curacao.
First houses were made with bricks, They glued them together with mud, and the outside you had to plaster, thus making it a closed wall. And if you plaster, you paint it. And they were mostly painted white.
Whitewashed.
Whitewashed. That was the cheapest color they could get.
And how did they get to be so colorful?
Well, there was a governor in 1816, and you can imagine most of the houses, when being white, when the sun reflects in the houses, he said, whenever I walk through town, I get a terrible headache because of the sun. I want them to be painted another color within 2 weeks, and all the houses were painted other colors except white.
Did his headaches go away?
That doesn't say. The history doesn't tell.
Okay. Well, they certainly are beautiful.
Yeah.
The districts of Punda and Otrabanda are connected by the Queen Emma Pontoon Bridge. This is quite a piece of work. The entire bridge is set on a series of floats. The The first Europeans to set foot on Curacao were Spanish explorers who showed up in 1499. When they realized that there was no gold on the island, they set up a few cattle farms as a future source of food and shoved off. Then in 1634, the Dutch arrived and took control of the island. The Spanish surrendered without much resistance, but the cattle put up an extraordinary fight, though they were eventually forced to surrender. The Dutch influence is still very strong in Curacao. Besides the political relationship between Curacao and Holland, there's an ongoing cultural relationship and a shared history of more than 350 years. The historic center of Willemstad is called Punda, which means the point, and its architecture is classic Dutch colonial. From the Punda end sits on wheels that are locked onto a circular track. The Punda end has a set of diesel engines attached to propellers. When they want to open the bridge, the engines are started and the bridge swings out from Punda, allowing the harbor traffic to pass. The Jewish community in Curacao built the Mikveh Israel Emmanuel Synagogue, which opened for Passover services in 1732 and has been in use since then, which makes it the oldest synagogue in continuous operation in the New World. The floor of the synagogue is covered with sand as a reminder of the 40 days and nights that the Jews wandered in the desert after escaping from bondage in Egypt. But the sand is also a reminder of the time of the Spanish Inquisition, when Jews were forced to practice their religion in secret rooms. The sand, 16 and 1700s. The Dutch colonists, like colonists all around the world, tried to recreate their homeland.
So we're in the middle of Otrabanda. Otrabanda was built since 1708, 18th century. It started off having...
Henko van der Woude is one of Curaçao's leading architects and an authority on the island's architectural history.
Okay, this is the Peña building, built in 1708, and that represents the Rococo or Renaissance, the Renaissance style.
All the 1700s was that Renaissance.
All the 1700s, yes, yes, the whole of the 18th century. You can tell by the curls, and if you would go to Amsterdam, the same period, you would find the same kind of architecture. The building used to stop here, and this was the addition of about the 2 yards, which is added.
Yes, you can see where it ended.
Exactly.
And then suddenly they built it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, what you see is the color. The